My name is Simone Adler, and I was 32 the year I understood that my mother-in-law had never intended to include my daughter in her family at all. I need to tell you who Lily is before I tell you what was done to her, because she deserves to be known as herself before she is known as the child who was cropped out of a photograph. Lily was born when I was 26, to a relationship that ended when she was 8 months old, cleanly and without drama, in the mutual recognition of two people who were better as co-parents than as partners. Her father, Marcus, remained present and consistent every other weekend and Tuesday dinners, and the full summer when work allowed. She was not a child who had been abandoned or hurt. She was a child who was loved by everyone who had taken the time to know her. She had large, dark eyes and an opinion about everything, and a habit of narrating her own activities in the third person when she was thinking through a problem, which she had picked up from the audiobooks I played in the car, and which made her sound, sometimes, like a tiny documentary about herself. She collected interesting rocks, the kind with visible layers or unexpected colors, and kept them in a shallow wooden box on her windowsill that she rearranged by some criteria she had not fully explained to me. She drew pictures of horses with enormous Monets. She loved libraries with the specific devotion of a person who has understood early that books are places you can go. I am a children's book illustrator. I worked from a studio in our house, a back room with good north-facing light, and a drafting table and walls covered in sketches and color studies and reference images. I had illustrated 9 books by the time I met Tom. I had a career I had built by myself, in a field I loved, on my own hours, which allowed me to be the kind of mother I wanted to be. Present, available, unhurried. Lily knew what I did. She had watched me make the pictures since she was old enough to sit on the floor of the studio and play while I worked. She thought illustrating books was the most natural job in the world because it was the only job she had ever watched up close. I met Tom Adler at a gallery opening in Burlington when Lily was 5. He was an engineer who had come to the opening with a college friend and had positioned himself with the confident discomfort of a practical man at an art event, interested and slightly out of his element, which I found immediately appealing. He asked real questions about the work. He did not pretend to know more than he did. He had a dry humor that revealed itself slowly, like something he was deciding whether to trust you with, and which became, once trusted, one of the things I loved most about him. He met Lily on our 3rd date. This was deliberate on my part. I did not introduce the men I dated to my daughter as a rule. But Tom had asked about her in a way that suggested he understood she was not separate from me but central to me, and I had decided, cautiously, to see what he did with an introduction. What he did was crouch down to her level and ask, with genuine curiosity, about the rock she was holding, which was a piece of quartz with pink veining that she had found on the walk from the parking lot and had been carrying ever since. He listened to the full explanation. He asked one follow-up question. Lily gave him a measured look and then went back to her rock, which in her social vocabulary meant he had passed. He passed. We were married 14 months later, in September, in a ceremony at a farm venue outside Millhaven with 60 guests, and a photographer named Vive Chen, who Tom's college friend had recommended, and who turned out to be one of those photographers who has the specific quality of making people forget they are being photographed. Lily wore the white dress with the yellow sash. She had chosen it herself, with the certainty of a 6-year-old who knows exactly what she wants and does not require anyone's confirmation. She carried the wildflowers from the field. She stood between Tom and me for the family portrait, and she laughed at something Vive said, And Vive caught it at the exact moment, which is the kind of thing a good photographer does, and which gave us a photo that was, without question, the best one taken that day. That photo is the one I want to talk about. The one with the three of us. The original. Doris Adler had not been warm to me from the beginning, and I want to be precise about that phrasing because warm is a spectrum, and what she had been was calibrated. Not cold, not openly hostile, but positioned at the cool end of a warmth that was available only in particular conditions. The conditions being, as far as I could tell, that I be the kind of woman Doris had been expecting, and that Lily not be present. I had picked up these conditions slowly, over the 14 months of our engagement, the way you pick up a pattern in wallpaper that you stop noticing once you've seen it once and then can't unsee. Doris was interested in Tom. She was interested in the wedding plans insofar as they reflected on the Adler family. She was willing, at dinners and holiday visits, to be pleasant in a managed way with me. She was willing to acknowledge Lily the way a person acknowledges furniture they did not choose but have decided to accommodate, with a correctness that was its own kind of refusal. She never asked Lily a question that required a real answer. She never crouched down to her level. She asked at the engagement dinner whether Lily would be at the wedding, with a phrasing that was technically neutral and tonally not. I told her Lily was in the wedding party. Doris said, ah, and changed the subject. Tom's father Warren was a quieter version of the same temperature, not unkind. Simply not there, in the way some men are not there, organized around their wives' decisions the way planets organize around gravity, taking their cues and matching their expressions. I had talked to Tom about this multiple times, in the measured way we had developed for difficult subjects, the way that acknowledges both people's reality without turning the conversation into a siege. Tom heard me. He said his mother was particular and that she would warm up over time, and that the important thing was that he loved Lily and that he was choosing us. He said us with the conviction I needed from him. I believed it. I kept believing it until the photograph. The wedding was on a Saturday in September. Vive was extraordinary, the way Tom's friend had promised. She was small and quick, and had the ability to be invisible in a room while also catching everything in it, and the photographs she delivered 2 weeks later were the kind that make a person want to sit down and look at them for a long time. The family portrait was the third image in the gallery. 3 of us. Tom on my right, Lily between us, Lily mid-laugh, the gap tooth showing, the wildflowers slightly crooked in her hand because she had been gesturing with them when Vive called the shot. It was the best photograph taken that day, and I said so to Tom when we looked at the gallery together at the kitchen table on a Sunday evening, both of us leaning toward the laptop screen. He looked at it for a moment. He smiled the particular smile of a person seeing something true. That's the one, he said. We ordered prints. A large one for the wall of our living room, a smaller one for the hallway. I had one made wallet-sized that I kept in the front pocket of my bag, not because I am the kind of person who carries wallet photos, but because it was that good and I wanted it near me. Doris received her print in the mail 2 weeks after we sent them out, the same 5x7 we sent to everyone, the 3 of us, Lily and the wildflowers and the gap tooth and all of it. I did not know, when I dropped that envelope in the mail, that it was the last time Doris would look at the photo as we sent it. The first hint came at Thanksgiving. Doris and Warren had us for dinner at their house in Millhaven, the house where Tom had grown up, and I had been in enough to know the mantelpiece and what it held. The family photographs arranged with the care of someone for whom the mantelpiece is a form of argument about how the family should be understood. There was Tom's school portrait from 7th grade. There was Tom and Warren at a fishing trip somewhere with mountains. There was a photo of Doris and her sister at what looked like a cruise. The wedding photo was there too, in a new silver frame, centered above the fireplace. I walked to it before dinner, the way you walk toward a photograph of yourself when you see one in someone else's house. And I stood in front of it and I looked at it. Two people, Tom and me, no Lily. I stood there for a moment, very still. The photo was the same size and format as the original, but it had been cropped, and cropped carefully, so that the remaining composition was clean and balanced, and gave no visible indication that anyone had ever stood in the space to the left of Tom, where Lily had been. I looked at the silver frame. I looked at Tom and me, smiling, on Doris's mantelpiece. I turned around. Tom was across the room talking to his father. Doris was in the kitchen. Lily was in the den with a book she had found on a low shelf, absorbed and quiet. I stood in the living room and I looked at the photograph for a long time. Then I went to help with dinner. I want to stop here because I know some of you have had a moment like that one. The moment you see something that tells you clearly what is happening, and everything in you goes very still, and you understand that how you respond in the next 10 seconds is going to matter. If you've had that moment, leave one word below. I'll know exactly what it means. And if you want to stay for the part where the original photograph comes back into this story, subscribe before you forget. Now back to it. I told Tom that night. Not at dinner, not in front of his parents, not with any audience or drama. I waited until we were in the car and Lily was asleep in the back, the heavy sleep of a child who has eaten well and read for 2 hours and used up everything she had, and then I told him, in a quiet voice, what I had seen on the mantelpiece. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said his mother had probably just used a different photo. I told him it was the same photo. The same composition, the same background, the same suits, the same dress. It had been cropped. He was quiet for longer this time. He said, maybe it was just the framing. Sometimes when you print things, the framing changes. I looked at him. I did not say anything. He said, I'll talk to her. I told him okay, and I looked out the window for the rest of the drive, and I thought about the framing argument he had made, the way he had reached for a technical explanation rather than the obvious one, the way a person reaches for something to hold onto when the obvious thing is too heavy to pick up right away. I understood it. I did not accept it, but I understood it. He talked to his mother. I know this because he told me he had, and because he came home from the phone call with the specific expression of a man who has made an effort and found that the effort produced something less than what he was hoping for. He said his mother had said she preferred the photo of just the two of them, that it was traditional for a wedding portrait to feature the couple, that she had nothing against Lily. It was simply a matter of the kind of photograph she wanted on her mantelpiece. I sat with that for a while. A matter of the kind of photograph she wanted. Not a mistake, not an accident, a preference, actively stated. The preference being that the photograph above her fireplace, the one shown to every visitor who came into that house, the one that represented the Adler family, as Doris wished it to be understood, not include my daughter. I asked Tom what he had said in response. He said he had told her he thought we should all be in the family photo together. I asked what she had said. He said she appreciated that, but it was her house and her mantelpiece. I looked at him for a long time. Tom is not a confrontational person. This is one of the things I had loved about him in the beginning, the steadiness of him, the quality of a person who does not escalate, who does not go looking for conflict, who assumes that most things can be worked out at a reasonable volume over time. It was part of what had made Lily trust him so quickly, that particular non-threatening steadiness. But there is a version of non-confrontational that becomes, in practice, a form of permission, where the person who won't fight for something leaves the impression that the something is not worth fighting for. And watching Tom accept her house, her mantelpiece, as the end of the conversation, I felt something shift between us that I was not sure how to name. "That's your daughter's photo, too," I said. "It's Lily's photo. You're her father now." He looked pained. He said he knew that. "Does your mother know it?" I said. He didn't answer. I went to my studio and I closed the door, not with a slam, just a close. I sat at my drafting table and I looked at the sketches on the wall, the children I was drawing for a book about a girl who builds a boat, and I thought about Lily asleep in her room and the gap in the photograph above a fireplace in Millhaven. She hadn't seen it. That was the only mercy. She had been in the den with her book and she had not walked to the mantelpiece, and she did not know, as she slept that night with her rock collection on the windowsill and her horse drawings pinned to the corkboard above her desk, that her grandmother had made a decision about whether she belonged in the frame. I decided, sitting in my studio, that she was not going to find out from me. Not yet. Not while I was still figuring out what to do about it. What I did instead that evening was open my email and find Vive Chen's contact information. I did not send the email yet. I just found the address and I saved it in a draft with no subject line, and I left it there, the way you leave a tool in a drawer when you're not sure yet which job it's for. The following months were the months where I learned the true shape of what I was dealing with. Doris sent Christmas cards. She sent them to Tom and me. The card said Tom and Simone on the envelope, and the note inside said "Wishing you two all the very best." The two printed in a way that could have meant we were just two out of a larger group, but didn't quite. Lily got a card from Warren and Doris, separately, a generic one with a cartoon snowman, signed Grandma Doris and Grandpa Warren in the formal way, not with the warmth that a child's Christmas card should carry. I watched Lily open it. She read it. She set it on the table with the others and went back to the tree. She didn't ask why her card was separate from ours. She was 6 and the distinction was one she did not yet have the language for. But children do not need language to receive a message. They receive it through texture, through warmth or the absence of warmth, through whether someone crouches down and whether the card is the same card or a different one. At Easter, Doris sent a package of chocolates for Tom and me and a smaller package for Lily, again separate. The kind of separated generosity that makes the distinction visible while maintaining the form of inclusion. I was keeping a record in my head by then. The way I kept the color notes for my illustrations, not formally, but consistently, each observation filed in the right place so the full picture could be seen when I needed to see it. In April, Tom's sister, Dana, came to visit from Portland with her husband and their 2 kids, boys of 8 and 10. Dana was different from Tom in almost every way, louder and more curt, and less likely to look for the gentle interpretation of a difficult situation, and she had always been straightforwardly warm to me in a way that I appreciated without fully trusting, because I had not yet had enough time with her to know whether the warmth extended to Lily. It did. Dana sat with Lily for 45 minutes on the second evening of the visit, looking at the rock collection and hearing the explanation of each one, asking better questions than most adults asked. And Lily had given her the rare and significant honor of being allowed to hold the pink quartz. This told me what I needed to know about Dana. She understood what mattered. On the third evening, Dana and I sat on the back porch while Tom and her husband talked inside and the kids were upstairs. Dana poured wine and said, without preamble, "What's going on with my mother and Lily?" I looked at her. I saw the mantelpiece, she said. Last Christmas, I noticed. She paused. Mom said she preferred the couple's portrait. I told Dana the full version. The card, the Easter package, the dinner introductions, the way Doris spoke of Lily as adjacent to the family rather than in it. I told her flat, the way I had learned to tell hard things, without drama and without asking for a particular response. Dana listened. She was very still. Then she said, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry that's been happening." I told her I appreciated it. She said, "I'll talk to her." I told her Tom had already talked to her. Dana said, "Tom is too gentle." She said it without judgment, just as a fact. "I'll talk to her differently." I did not ask what differently meant. I thanked her, and we finished our wine and went inside, and I noted, again, that the people who had seen the situation clearly were the ones who had not been afraid to look directly at it. Dana talked to her mother. I know this because Doris called Tom the following week, and the call lasted 47 minutes, and Tom came out of the bedroom where he had taken it with the expression of a man who has been in a long, complicated negotiation and is not sure who won. He told me his mother had said she loved Lily in her way, that she had not meant anything by the photograph, that she was older and had different ideas about family composition, that Dana had been unkind to her. He said he had told his mother that Lily was his daughter and that he needed her to be treated as a full member of the family. I asked what his mother had said. He said she had cried. I asked whether anything was going to change. He was quiet. Then he said, "I think so. I think she understood." I did not tell him what I thought. I had learned by then that there was a version of hope that Tom needed to carry about his mother, a version that said she was capable of more than her behavior had demonstrated, and that the hope was part of what allowed him to stay in motion. I was not going to take that hope away from him. It wasn't mine to take. What I was going to do was wait, patiently and with documentation. And I was going to keep the draft email to Vive Chen in my outbox, still with no subject line, and I was going to give the situation a full season to either change or clarify. I went back to my studio. I finished the book about the girl and the boat. I started a new one, which was about a grandmother and a granddaughter who plant a garden together, which was the kind of irony I was not going to examine too closely. I illustrated the grandmother with warm hands and a slight stoop and reading glasses that she was always losing, and every time I drew her I thought about the things a grandmother could be, and the things she could choose not to be, and the distance between those two choices. Tom and I had Sunday dinners at the Millhaven house twice more that spring. Doris was unchanged. She was careful and correct, the version of herself she had been since the first phone conversation Tom had attempted, and she included Lily in the way that a person includes a piece of furniture that has been pointed out to them, by making sure she did not actively exclude it rather than by engaging with it as a real object in the room. Lily, for her part, was 6 and then 6.5, and she was developing the specific social intelligence of a child who has figured out that some adults are warmer than others, and has adjusted her expectations accordingly. She was not hurt by Doris in a way I could see. She simply did not go toward her the way she went toward Dana, or the way she went toward my mother, or the way she had gone toward Tom from the beginning. She kept a polite and cheerful distance and organized her attention around the parts of the visit that were interesting to her, which were usually the parts that involved Warren's workshop in the basement, where he kept his woodworking tools, and which Lily had decided was a place of great importance. Warren, I will say, was better than Doris. He showed Lily the tools with a seriousness that she appreciated. He answered her questions about the wood grain the way she answered his questions about the rocks, with specificity and without condescension. He was not warm in the way of a person choosing warmth, but he was decent in the way of a person who, removed from his wife's social choreography, simply responded to the child in front of him as a child who deserved attention. I noted this. I filed it. I kept the draft email in my outbox, and I gave the situation its full season. It clarified. The anniversary party was Doris's idea. She proposed it in May, 6 months after the wedding, a gathering at the house in Millhaven to celebrate Tom and me with close family and a few longtime friends. She called it an intimate celebration, and she sent formal invitations, which was the kind of thing Doris did, and she asked if she could display some of the wedding photos. I said yes. I said it genuinely. I thought it was a generous gesture and I wanted to believe in it. The party was on a Saturday in June. I wore a dress I liked. Lily wore the yellow cardigan she had chosen that morning, deliberate and happy about it, because she was 6 and Saturday parties were good things, and she had not yet been given a reason to feel otherwise. We arrived at the house at 4. The living room had been arranged for guests, extra chairs and small tables, and a display near the window with framed photographs. I walked toward it. The display held 7 photographs. Tom and me at various points in the engagement period, Tom and Doris at a dinner, the wedding photo from the ceremony, the mantelpiece portrait in its silver frame, the cropped one. I counted the photographs. 7. None of them included Lily, not one. Lily, who had been in the wedding. Lily, who was at the party that afternoon in her yellow cardigan. Not one photograph showed she was part of this family. I stood at the display for a long time. I heard Lily behind me, talking to Warren about something, her bright explaining voice, and I heard Warren giving his careful, polite responses, and the sound of her voice while I stood in front of those 7 photographs did something to me that none of the months of smaller cuts had quite managed. I kept my face arranged. I kept it arranged through the party and through dinner and through Doris's toast, which was warm and practiced and named everyone present by name, including Lily, and which felt, after those 7 photographs, like a performance of inclusion designed to create the impression of the thing it was withholding. I kept it arranged in the car. I kept it arranged until Lily was asleep. Then I went to my studio and I sat at my drafting table and I opened my email and I found the draft with no subject line. I typed, subject, original wedding photos, and I wrote to Vive Chen. I kept the email simple. I told her I was following up on our wedding photos and that I was looking for the original unedited files from the family portrait session if she still had them. I told her I understood she might have archived or deleted them by then and that I appreciated whatever she could offer. She replied in 3 hours. Of course I still have them, she wrote. I keep originals for 2 years minimum. Which one are you looking for? I described the photo, the 3 of us. Lily midlaugh, the wildflowers, the gap tooth. She sent it within the hour. Full resolution. Original file, time-stamped from the morning of the wedding. I opened it on my laptop. I looked at it for a long time. There we were, all 3 of us. Tom on my right with the particular expression he has in photographs that I have come to think of as his truest face, a little uncertain and entirely present. Me with my hand on Lily's shoulder. And Lily, center frame, laughing, the gap tooth and the wildflowers and the yellow sash, and the complete and total radiating joy of a 6-year-old who is exactly where she is supposed to be. I had the thought that I always had when I looked at a piece of illustration reference, when I found the image that held the exact truth of what I was trying to draw. That the thing I had been looking for had been there the whole time. I had just needed to ask the right person. I sat with the photograph for a long time. I thought about what Doris had done, and I thought about why she had been able to do it, and I thought about what the original file now meant in the architecture of the situation. Doris had operated under the assumption that the cropping was private, that it was her home and her mantelpiece and her choice, and that the original, the inconvenient one, the three-person one, the one that did not fit the family she had decided she was keeping, was somewhere in a gallery she controlled, or was simply a digital file that had been delivered and forgotten. No copy, no record, no recourse. She had not thought about the photographer. She had not thought about Vive Chen, who kept her originals for 2 years minimum because that was her professional standard, who had no reason to delete the files and every professional reason to preserve them, who had been hired for 4 hours on a September afternoon, and had, in the ordinary course of her work, protected something that no one in the Voss family had thought to protect. The photographer had kept the original. I want you to sit with that for a moment because I have sat with it myself many times since. Vive had no idea, when she was moving around that field catching light and people in motion, that the photograph she was taking would matter in this way. She was doing her job. She was good at her job. She kept her work because that was the kind of professional she was. She did not know that keeping her work was the same as keeping a record of what happened. She just kept it. And when I asked for it, she gave it to me without hesitation, and she gave it with the particular generosity of a person who does not know why you are asking and assumes the reason is good. She had not asked why I needed the original. She had just sent it. I wrote her back after I had looked at the file long enough to know what I was going to do with it. I thanked her. I told her the photo was exactly what I had hoped for. I told her she was very good at her job. She wrote back, "That one's one of my favorites from the day. That kid's laugh is something else." I looked at the message for a while. Then I saved the file in 3 places, my laptop and a cloud backup, and an external drive that I kept in the filing cabinet in my studio with the contracts and the royalty statements, and the other things I needed to be able to find when they mattered. I was an illustrator. I understood the value of keeping originals. I kept everything. Then I started making some decisions. The first decision was the simplest one and the one I should tell you about last, so you understand what it meant. I sent the original photograph to a print shop in Burlington. I had it printed in a large format, the largest size that still fit the frame I already owned, and I had it framed in a warm wood frame, plain and well-made, and I put it on the mantelpiece of our house in Millhaven, our house, Tom's and mine and Lily's, and I have not moved it since. It is the first thing you see when you come through the front door. 3 of us, all of us. The second decision took more time to arrive at. I had not confronted Doris at the party. I had not confronted her in the car on the way home or in the days that followed. I had not sent an angry message or called her out in front of the family or done any of the things that I understood would have been, for me, a relief in the short term and a cost in every term after that. I had children's books to illustrate and a daughter to raise and a husband who was still doing the work of understanding what his family owed us, and none of those things benefited from me spending my energy on a confrontation that would almost certainly produce tears and justifications and very little change. What I had was the original photograph, and what the original photograph gave me was something better than a confrontation. It gave me the truth in a format that could be shared. Tom and I had a conversation, the third and most direct one we had ever had about his mother, 2 weeks after Vive's email. I told him about the anniversary party display. I told him I had counted the 7 photographs and that not one of them included his daughter. I showed him Vive's original file on my laptop. And I told him what I needed, which was not an apology from Doris. I had stopped believing that an apology from Doris would come in a form that was worth much but a change. Visible, specific, sustained. Lily's place in this family acknowledged in the places where family was acknowledged. Tom looked at the original photo on my screen for a long time. Then he looked at me. And I saw in his face the moment the hope he had been carrying about his mother finally got heavy enough that he put it down. "I'll handle it," he said. I told him I knew he would. I told him I needed to believe that this time would be different from the previous 2 times, and I told him what different looked like to me. He nodded. He was not happy. He was doing something harder than happy. He was choosing. He called his mother the following day. I was in my studio. The call lasted 28 minutes. I did not hear the details. I heard his voice through the door, not words but tone, and the tone was different from the previous calls. Steady and direct and not looking for a soft landing. He came in afterward and sat down and told me what had happened. He had told Doris about the party display. About the 7 photographs without Lily. He had told her that he had tried to have this conversation twice before and that something had to change. He had told her that Lily was his daughter, not in the loose honorary way but in the full sense, and that anyone who wanted to be part of his family had to treat her that way. He told her about the photograph, the original. He told her that the photo on her mantelpiece was a cropped version of an image that had 3 people in it, and that cropping Lily out of it was a statement about how Doris saw her, and that the statement was not acceptable. Doris had cried. She had said she had not meant to exclude Lily, she had simply preferred the image as a couple. She was of a generation that thought differently about these things. She had not considered how it would look. Tom had said, quietly and without cruelty, that consideration was exactly what was required. That a 6-year-old child deserved to be considered, that the conversation was over if it was not going to result in something changing. Doris had said she would try. Tom looked at me when he told me this. I looked back at him. We both knew that try was not a promise and that the work was not finished. But I also knew, looking at him in that moment, that something in the architecture of what he owed his mother had shifted, and that the shift was real, and that it had been produced, more than anything, by the existence of the original file. By the fact that the truth of that day in September was preserved, in full resolution, time-stamped on a photographer's hard drive, and that when I had asked for it, it had been there. You can crop a photograph. You cannot unshoot one. Doris did not transform overnight. I want to be honest about that because transformation is slow and uneven, and the stories that say otherwise are the ones that leave people feeling like their own slow, uneven experiences are failures. What Doris did was change the mantelpiece. Tom told me she had, though I had not seen it yet. She had, he said, put up a different photograph, one from the rehearsal dinner where Lily was standing next to Tom with her hand in his hand, the 2 of them looking at something off to the left with the same angle of their heads, the specific similarity of a father and a daughter who have been paying attention to each other. I did not go to Millhaven for several months after the party. I needed the distance. I needed to be certain that what I went back to was something real and not a performance staged for the duration of my visit. When I did go, it was with Tom and Lily on a Sunday in October, 8 months after the anniversary party. The drive was the usual drive, Lily narrating her observations about the landscape in the documentary voice, the hills going orange, and the sky doing the particular Vermont October thing that I had been trying to capture in a book illustration for 2 weeks without quite getting it right. We pulled up to the house. We went inside. I did not make a point of walking to the mantelpiece. I talked to Warren in the hallway, and I helped Lily with her coat, and I carried the dish I had brought to the kitchen. And then, because it was on the way and because I needed to know, I walked through the living room. The rehearsal dinner photo was there. Lily and Tom, heads at the same angle, hand in hand. In a new frame, warm-colored wood, beside the silver one that now held a different photo, a different wedding moment, one that I recognized but had not ordered, which meant Doris had gone back to Vive's gallery herself and chosen one and had it printed. I stood in front of it for a moment. It was not the original. It was not the three of us midlaugh with the wildflowers and the gap tooth and all of it. But it was a choice, freely made, in the direction of inclusion. And a choice, even an imperfect one, made in the right direction, is different from a refusal. I went back to the kitchen. Doris was at the stove. She was doing the thing she did when she was working through something she had not finished yet, moving efficiently and without looking up. When I came in, she looked up. She said, "That dish smells wonderful." I told her it was the pasta Tom liked. She nodded. She turned back to the stove. Then she said, without turning, "I put up a different photo." I told her I had seen it. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, still at the stove, "She looks like you around the eyes." I stood in the doorway of her kitchen. "She does," I said. Doris did not say anything else. She did not turn around. She kept working at the stove, and I stood in the doorway, and the kitchen was warm and the pasta was nearly ready, and Lily was in the living room explaining to Warren the difference between shale and limestone, the documentary voice going at full volume, and something in the room shifted by one quiet degree. I did not mark it as a victory. I had learned by then that the moments that matter in a long, slow, complicated situation are rarely the ones that feel like victories. They feel like weather changing. You notice it because the air is different, and you are not sure yet what it means for the day ahead, but you know something has moved. 1 degree. In the right direction. I carried my dish to the table and I sat down and I let the evening be what it was. Tom poured wine. Lily came in from the living room with a piece of wood Warren had given her, a small square of oak with a smooth surface, and she set it on the table next to her plate and kept one hand on it the way she kept one hand on her rocks, touching the things that were solid when the world was uncertain. Doris served the pasta. She served Lily without being asked, the right amount, which is a small thing and was also not a small thing in the context of everything that had preceded it. After dinner, while Tom and Warren were doing the dishes, and Lily was back in the workshop looking at the wood samples, Doris and I sat at the table. It was the first time in 14 months that the two of us had been alone in the same room without the architecture of a gathering around us. She did not look at me directly. She looked at her wine glass. "I know I haven't been easy," she said. I waited. "I had an idea of what things would look like," she said. "I had it for a long time, and when they looked different, I didn't handle it well." I thought about everything I could have said. There was a great deal. I said, "I know." She looked up. Her face was doing something complicated, the expression of a person who has been holding a position for so long that releasing it is physically effortful. "She's a good girl," she said. About Lily. "She's a remarkable girl," I thought. "She's the kind of girl who picks wildflowers for her own wedding bouquet and explains the difference between shale and limestone and keeps everything that is worth keeping in a wooden box on a windowsill. She's the kind of girl you are lucky to have in your family." But I did not say all of that. Some truths land better when they arrive in their own time, and I had learned to tell the difference between the moment for the full truth and the moment for the small opening. "She is," I said. Doris nodded. She picked up her wine. "I'd like to try," she said, "to do better." I told her I would like that too. It was not reconciliation. It was not forgiveness. It was a degree. One degree, offered carefully, accepted carefully, by two women who were going to have to find a way to share a child's life, and who were maybe, slowly, beginning the work of that. I carried it back to the kitchen table, and I sat down, and I thought about Vive's hard drive, and the original file and the timestamp, and the three of us in the field behind the venue with Lily mid-laugh. And I thought that the reason the photograph had been so powerful was not because it proved anything that wasn't already true. Lily had been there. Everyone at the wedding had seen her. The truth of her presence did not depend on any photograph to exist. The photograph did something different. It made the absence visible. It showed, with the kind of clarity that is only possible when you can put the original and the cropped versions side by side, exactly what had been removed and what removing it had meant. It did that quietly, without accusation, without argument, without requiring anyone to admit to anything in the moment it was introduced. It simply existed, in full resolution, and it let the truth of what had happened be held by more than one person. Tom had looked at it and put down the hope he had been carrying. Doris had looked at it, or its consequences, and had done something she might not have done otherwise. The photograph had not fixed anything on its own. But it had made the fixing possible by making the thing that needed to be fixed impossible to look away from. I am a children's book illustrator. I work with pictures for a living. I know what a frame does to an image. I know that what you choose to include and what you choose to leave out tells the full story of what you believe about the subject. I know that composition is argument. I know that every border is a decision. And I know now that the frames that matter are the ones you choose for yourself, in your own house with all three of you in them. Not the frame someone else picks for their mantelpiece. Your frame, the one that holds the original. The original is still on Vive's hard drive. It will be there for at least another year, because that is her professional standard, because she is the kind of person who keeps things that are worth keeping without needing to know in advance which things those will turn out to be. It is saved in 3 places in my house: my laptop and the cloud, and the external drive in the studio filing cabinet with the royalty statements and the contracts. And it is printed in a warm wood frame on the mantelpiece in our hall. 3 of us. All of us. Lily found the original photograph last spring. I had a smaller print of it on my desk in the studio, tucked into the corner of the corkboard among the sketches, and she spotted it one afternoon while she was doing homework at the corner table I keep for her. She looked at it for a moment. Then she said, "That's us." I told her it was, from the wedding. She looked at it for another moment. I was laughing, she said. I told her she had thought something was funny. She thought about this. "Can I have one?" She said, "For my room." I had one printed for her the following week. Wallet size, the same size I keep in my bag. She put it on her windowsill, between the pink quartz and the piece of shale with the layered stripes, tucked where the morning light catches it. It sits there now among the rocks she has been collecting since she was old enough to understand that some things are worth keeping. She is right about that. Family is the people who are in the original. Not the edited version, not the version made comfortable for someone else's mantelpiece, but the real one. The one taken before anyone got hold of a crop tool. The one with all the laughing and the wildflowers and the gap tooth and the yellow sash and the child who picked her own flowers because she had decided, without asking anyone, that a wedding should have more. That is the one worth keeping. That is the one I kept. That's my story. One photograph cropped by a woman who had decided my daughter was optional. One photographer who kept the original, 2 years minimum, just because that was her practice. And one 6-year-old on a windowsill between the rocks she loves, looking at the picture and saying, "That's us." If you have a photographer from your wedding or a milestone event, reach out to them today. Tell them you want the originals, the real ones, before anyone got to decide what to leave out. And if this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs it tonight. Subscribe if you're new here. I'll see you in the next one.